Hello. Welcome to New Gameplay Today. I'm one of your hosts, Wesley, and I'm joined by Kyle today. How you doing?
Hey, how's it going? I don't even know what we're doing here. What's going on?
So, The Last of Us Part 2. Have you ever heard of this game? It kind of made waves in
Yeah.
2020, but it's back and remastered, believe it or not. They
Uh,
do that now. A game comes out, and 4 years later, you can get a remastered version. It's pretty cool, I
yeah,
think.
which is cool. I mean, I really like The Last of Us Part 2 quite a
Me
bit.
too.
But my
Yeah.
question, which maybe you can answer for me, is like, is it worth going back to only a couple years later at this point?
I had played it twice at launch because I got the platinum trophy, and you have to basically do 2 playthroughs for that. So this was my first time replaying it, which I didn't actually replay it. My wife had never played it, and she remained unspoiled. So she watched, or she played it, and I watched her. And you can read
Oh,
about
okay.
her experience on GameInformer.com right now. But I still had a great time, and I think it solidified how much I like the game 4 years later. Despite all the leaks, controversy, and online people getting upset about Abby being very strong in the apocalypse, and blah blah blah. Like, I still really love this game,
Oh,
um,
absolutely.
and it
Yeah,
was
we talked
awesome.
about it
So
on the Game Informer show sometime recently, but I think what they did with their story should be sort of celebrated as just something phenomenal and unique and different and bold.
I agree. Yeah,
In a way that I'm sometimes frustrated that people dismiss certain elements of it. Where I'm like, guys, you really tried something and pulled it off.
same. Yeah, like it's because it wasn't perfect. It's like a lot of people see it as like a failure, but it's like, I don't know. I think we should celebrate. There was an easy sequel, and Naughty Dog did not make it, and I think
Yes,
that that's cool.
I'd much rather
Um,
have what we have now for sure.
yeah,
Um,
but that's
but
not what
yeah,
we're checking out today.
yeah,
These
because
are
this feels unfamiliar to me.
It should be. So in the remastered package, there's a section in like the bonus features now called Unused Levels, and this is one of three. And here is so there's commentary from Neil Druckmann, which is not included for obvious reasons because weird the commentary, but I listened to it. And this takes place near the end of the game. If you've played the game, you know that there's a big scene that happens in the barn with Ellie and Dina and Joel, and a drunk homophobic person. This was originally planned to like precede that scene. So in the game, we just start with Ellie in the barn house, but this is showing a section of the game that they had created that was going to lead up to that. Ultimately, it was cut, and Neil Druckmann says this was months and months away from being final. As you can see, it's missing like voiceover, and animations are kind of wonky, and the sound is weird. But it's like a really, I don't know, for me, it's just fascinating that Naughty Dog, one of the more esteemed developers in the world, is giving us this glimpse into game development we often don't get from anyone. Um, and I
Yeah,
don't know, it's just fascinating for me as someone who cares a lot about games.
this is cool. So it's like a scene in the game that was, I don't know, what are we thinking, like 40 to 50% done, and or maybe even more
Yeah.
than that they cut, and they're letting us, and they have it on in the remastered version where you can play through it. That's really
Yeah.
cool. I didn't realize
Yeah.
that was part of the package.
This is me playing it, and there's 3 unused levels. There's an option for commentary to play during the level, and then before you boot up each level, there's like a video that Druckmann, the director of Last of Us Part 2,
Right.
shot, and it's basically him talking about the level and why it got cut and how far along it was. Apparently, of the three, this was the one that still needed the most work, which to me is like pretty impressive because this seems mostly there. Like, it's missing, a little polish and voiceover, but like, I don't know. That's like it's cool. I just played like a scene that I had not played before.
That is cool. Yeah.
Um, and so we're moving on to another one. This is one of the more developed scenes in the game. In The Last of Us Part 2, there's a part where Ellie gets sent to the sewers. And I always chuckle when I play that scene because it is so strangely short. She's in the sewers, and you basically just cross over some water for like 5 seconds, and then you're out of the sewers. And even in 2020, I played it being like, I wonder if there was more here. Because, like,
Oh yeah.
it's strangely short, and now I am correct in that assumption. There was more here, and we're about to watch me play through it. So I would say, I think this onward is what's new. Yeah, because you definitely don't do this little sewage slide section.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so Druckmann says here that they basically had this in the game to give players like a different form of traversal, which is navigating through rushing water, and there is a current that like pushes against you, and it has some light puzzle elements. But ultimately, I think he didn't say why they cut it, but after playing it, I can see why. It's kind of a useless 5 minutes. It doesn't feel super necessary.
Yeah, it also feels like different from The Last of Us, which is very, very grounded.
Yeah.
And it's like to kind of be sort of like on a water slide for a little while feels odd. I could understand why they decided to cut it, I think. But I do want to be clear that like I really am in love with the idea of it sort of being, putting a version of it so players can see. I mean, just to get an idea of like the kind of work that goes into elements of the game that just don't even make it to the end. That's really interesting.
Yeah. No, it's so cool. It's something that like weirdly, Naughty Dog is one of the more like I guess prestigious, you could say, in the games industry. People view their games as like an HBO series, and they've always tried to be more cinematic and I don't know, a Naughty Dog game always feels like a big deal.
Yeah.
Which is funny contrasted with more than most developers. Naughty Dog like kind of gives us some peeks behind the curtain. But whether it's like the Grounded documentary and then Grounded 2, which is now coming to this game later, it's not at launch, but it is coming later.
Oh wait, can you explain
YouTube.
that? Like they're gonna add a full documentary about the making of The Last of Us 2?
Oh yeah, I don't. You
Okay.
might have missed it, but last
No, I
week
missed this. Yeah.
they released a trailer for it, which the trailer's in the game, in the bonus features. But yeah, they're releasing a Grounded 2, the making of The Last of Us Part 2, and the trailer is already reminiscent of the first one. And it kind of says that they were filming the documentary and then COVID happened and people got sent home and they kind of just abandoned the documentary. And then the trailer has like a cutesy, but the footage has been found, unearthed. So we put it together to, I'm sure that's exactly what happened. They found it buried in the Naughty Dog
forgot we
studio
filmed
lot.
in everyone's home for
Yeah.
3 years or whatever.
Exactly. But it's cool because it's I don't know. The trailer says they talk about crunch. They're talking about the leaks, stuff that you don't think a PlayStation first party studio would publicly address necessarily in such a big way.
Yeah.
So between that and then showing us unused levels, I don't know. I think it's cool that Naughty Dog, being one of the more prestigious AAA studios, is showing us this big peek behind the curtains of game development.
Yeah, I mean their games kind of are among the ones that feel like magic because they're so visually impressive and polished by the time they release that it is nice to get a chance to see like, yeah, no, this these go through this whole process. It takes us a long time to get to that place.
Yeah, and it's actually up here there's like a cool little thing I thought was fun, which we will see shortly.
So
there's like little narrative nods in these unused levels, and we're about to come up on one that I thought was cool, just a little moment.
And no like narrative or like lore kind of like revelations or anything, I'm sure, in these little sequences, right?
Oh no, they're just like nodding to the main story, but I wouldn't say any of it's like necessary at all, really.
Naughty Dog felt the same way, obviously.
Yeah, right. I do wish that like Druckmann kind of explained more why they got cut, but I mean, that's basically saying like we weren't happy with it or something, and I can see why they might not want to do that. But yeah, right here is a little moment.
I don't think you even get down there. Oh, weird. That's very unsettling.
Yeah, pretty cool. And I mean, that's kind of yeah. Ellie's, the whole game she's dealing with these like flashbacks of Joel's face down on the ground after he dies and stuff, and it's just a little nod to that. But I thought it was cool to see that they were kind of sprinkling that in.
Too. I mean, I don't like it.
Yeah.
It scares me, but I like the implementation.
And so here is the this is what you do in the game, the final game. You land basically around here, so you skip all that stuff I just did, and then you kind of climb up and leave the sewer. And like it's funny because this is what you do in the final game, and it's so like just random. Like you're in the sewers for 3 minutes. And it makes me
Yeah, I
wonder,
don't even
like,
remember this, if I'm being honest. I only played it once when it came out, so it's been a while.
yeah. But yeah, I can see now why it like feels so short and sudden to enter the sewer and then leave, because there was a whole little gameplay section cut out. But ultimately, I mean, we just watched it. It doesn't really do anything
No,
for
yeah,
the story or
it's
gameplay. It's a
just
fair
kind of
cut.
extends things, perhaps unnecessarily.
Yeah. And then, so we're about to transition to the third and final unused level. It's basically Ellie hunting a boar. I'm not quite sure where in the story it was going to be placed. It seems like a flashback, but Druckmann in the commentary didn't make it like super clear. But like based on what she's wearing, which I think is Joel's jacket, and this kind of reminds me of one of the flashback scenes. But basically, this scene was created to emulate and kind of harken back to the hunting scene when you first play as Ellie in The Last of Us Part 1,
Right.
which was a big deal. Like, I remember it was a huge surprise to play as her, and they kept it under wraps, and then you transition to her. And so she's hunting again, kind of like in Part 1. But this time, it's a boar.
So your
instead of
suspicion is that this was perhaps a flashback where one of the ones where Joel was still alive, or no?
I think so, because there's a few flashbacks in the game, and this one reminds me most of when her and Joel. Well, she starts with Tommy, and she's sniping on the mountain, and then they meet up with Joel, and then her and Joel go to the hotel to find and slash music store to find strings, and that's where Joel tells Ellie like, "Yeah, I did what I did,"
Gotcha.
and that's kind of like the break in their relationship. This just kind of reminds me of that scene, but I don't have any confirmation. There's just no part in the main campaign where you play as Ellie in the mountains in the forest like this, since it takes
Gotcha.
place in Seattle. But this is probably the most wonky one in my opinion. Specifically, the boar just kind of
Maybe the one they cut the earliest, so to speak.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, this is it. I'll let this level play out if you're watching and you want to see the rest of it. There's only about a minute or so to go, and there's like a fun little narrative nod thing at the end, kind of what we just saw with the infected in the tunnel. But yeah, these are the 3 unused levels of The Last of Us Part 2. They're part of The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered's like bonus features package. And I think it's worth checking out if you care about games and like to see a little behind the scenes peek like this. But
Yeah, I would love to see stuff like this more often. I understand that, like, you know, implementing a cut sequence, like there's a reason things get cut and they're difficult to, there's no point in polishing them and inserting them, you know, like making things playable for a player is difficult. But like, I appreciate the effort from Naughty Dog, because it's nice to learn these kind of details.
I agree. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.